Good morning. Our county commissioner meeting for July 5th, 2022. I call to order. We do have a quorum present with 3 in the chambers. Chairman Smith is absent, and Commissioner Shaenfield will be joining us later, hopefully by Zoom. At this point, if we could all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then give a moment of silence, and then before we move forward.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd be remiss to not start the meeting by wishing everyone, I hope everyone had a great 4th of July weekend and a celebration of our country. So with that, I will move forward with the agenda as presented. So if I could, we'll need to approve the agenda. So can I get a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I would approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? With none, all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, agenda passes. Up next is the approval of minutes. We've got a few of them. So first is the 6/14/22 intergovernmental meeting on joint leadership for the specific purpose tax. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion to approve the intergovernmental meeting minutes of 6/14/22.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Point of order, please.
Yes.
Question for our legal. Mr. De Leon, I was not present for that meeting. So what's protocol concerning the number of commissioners in the chamber?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, so you would abstain from that. So it's certainly something that you could table.
We'd have to table it for
Since it
that.
would be addressed later today. So it would be a table versus a postpone.
Mike, one other question I'd have, thinking in the back of my mind, thinking of protocol, could it be seconded by the chair and then brought to a vote and it would be passed 2-0
Mhm.
if I abstain?
That is true.
Is that a possibility?
That is a possibility, yes.
Thank you. I'll leave that up to our chairman as to which route he'd like to go. Otherwise, I can make a motion to postpone, Commissioner.
Commissioner Wendling, thank you for the point of order. I'll go ahead and second that as per the being okay by Attorney De Leon. All in favor? Sorry, any discussion? Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
please, let's note that I'll abstain.
And John, we'll make sure that's noted that Commissioner Wendling abstains from this vote. So all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 2-0 with 1 abstention from Commissioner Wendling. All right, up next, regular meeting minutes from 6/21/22. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wendling. Do I have a second?
I will second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Toman. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Up next, our final meeting minute, our budget adoption from 6/23/22. Do I have a motion to approve our special meeting budget adoption?
So moved. So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Wendling.
Yeah, I just would be remiss if I didn't make comment with regard to the budget that as much as I voted for it, and I will vote to pass it or approve the minutes and that type of thing, I just would like to remind ourselves and remind the public that I wished I had thought more about it from the standpoint that passing that budget did not do anything to help narrow the revenue and expenses in our budget to bring that closer together to balance the budget without using carryover or reserves. The other option would have been, had we been able to have thought about it quick enough, I would have requested, rather than take 500,000 out of reserves, may have asked Christina, our grants writer, to work on facilitating a possible plan that would allow us to use the ARPA money for wages that would could have been used to balance the budget rather than reserves. So I just want to point that out for anybody that is thinking about why there wasn't more discussion about balancing the budget. But I think we had that in our minds, but I don't think we commented on it. So I wanted to thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now we're going to move on to the acceptance of the bills. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Wendling.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the bills, which is approving of the EAL, approval of the abates and rebates.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes. So as we zip along, do we have any county residents' comments and concerns? And I do remind you, as you come to the podium, if you'll make sure you please speak into the microphone. You may have to lower it to make that possible, but also state who you are and what the issue is or what you're representing. So at this point, any county resident comments and concerns? Okay. Cindy indicates nothing through email or anything. So. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward. Our next item will be tab C, which is will be presented by Candy Pendleton. It's a fiscal year 2023 tax warrant agreement. And I will warn everyone that after this presentation, we will take a short 5-minute recess to complete some needed paperwork for the with Sally, I, and Candy, then come into session. So go ahead, Ms. Pendleton. And thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is something I come and see you with every July. It is the loan on our mill levy payment. So I know you all are aware, but I don't know if the public is aware that we get our mill levy payment typically in 2 large chunks, one in May and one in November. And the majority of our expenditures happen in the summertime. So there comes an occasion when we have to borrow against that mill levy payment, and we have a warrant agreement in front of you or in your packets from Commerce Bank. They will loan up to 75% of the mill levy amount that's paid back either with the November payment or the next June payment. So I have mentioned to several of you on several occasions, it is my goal to not have to use this loan, but it certainly is, if it's needed, we'd like to have it available. It takes some time to get it completed. So interest rate in your packet was incorrect. I want to point out that the interest rate is 2.95% instead of 2.25%. And everything else you should have had a copy of. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Miss Banks, Miss Pendleton, my question is historically, I remember when I was on the board, we used to have to use quite a bit of this to get through the year. And I know it's reduced over the last few years. Could you explain that reduction and what you guys have seen and how much you've had to use that? Because I know you said your goal is to get to the point of zero use of it.
Absolutely. So it really depends on projects and what we have going on. Last year, we borrowed $400,000. So typically it is, if we have construction projects in the summer, if fair attendance numbers aren't as good as we would hope to be, our cash carryover plays a big part in that. So all of those things play a part. I would say construction's the biggest part of that. So we don't have a ton of capital construction projects this summer. My hope is that we won't have to borrow for that. That's the biggest difference, Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Pendleton? Okay. Hearing none, I'll take a motion on the fiscal year 2023 tax warrant agreement for the Sweetwater County Events Complex.
Mr. Chairman, I will make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that and authorize chairman to sign.
Thank you. And I did think I heard, so we got that in your
Yes,
motion, Mary?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
we're all good. I kept looking at Sally to say, Sally, we good with that? And then Sally's in the back room.
Sally's up. There she is.
So anyway, with that, we have a motion and a second. Do any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we will move forward with that. We will go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break. We'll make it a 4-minute break and be back at 8:45 so we can get this paperwork taken care of for the events complex. Thank you.
Thank you.
The session. We're now on tab D, which is the adoption of the Region 4 Hazard Mitigation Plan. And to present today, we have Joe Tomich and Emily Covey. So if you guys will come up and introduce yourself at the microphone.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, most of my reason here today is to introduce you to Ms. Covey.
Name.
Oh, I'm Joe Tomich, sorry. So Emily Covey is your recently appointed emergency manager. She just received her governor's appointment within the last few weeks. So I want to take that opportunity to introduce her, and then I will let her present the majority of this. This is a multi-year plan that's been put in place, and we are ready to move forward on at this point. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Covey.
All right, thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Joe.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Emily Covey with Emergency Management, and we are here today to for the adoption of the Wyoming Region 4 Hazard Mitigation Plan for 2022. This plan has been approved by Homeland Security. There was a consultant involved in this for the counties of Lincoln, Sweetwater, and Uinta together. It was a long process, but this plan has been approved by Homeland Security. It's a really important project because we can get some grant funding through this. It's for all hazard mitigation projects that are aimed to reduce the risk from disasters and natural hazards. I have included the mitigation plan in your packet. I know it's quite lengthy, so if you have any questions.
Is there any questions for Ms. Covey?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yes.
There are no questions, but I would just comment that I didn't see anything listed for the Eden Valley Farson area, and maybe need to reach out in the future to the Eden Valley Improvement District, because I do know of wind damage and there's potential for flood damage and different damages in that valley, and I didn't see it even mentioned.
Yes.
So, and I know it would
absolutely.
come under county, so I'm just for the record bringing that to your attention.
Yes, thank you. And also I would like to comment that places like Bear Oil, Granger, Farson, all those smaller areas, I am personally reaching out to all of them because I want them to be included, as well as I would like them to know the resources and the support that is available to them.
And I realize Eden Valley and Farson is not an incorporated town or city, and so it comes under the county, but just wanted to point out, maybe need to reach out more to those areas. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions for Ms. Covey?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Wendling.
Ms. Covey, first of all, congratulations on being appointed by the governor.
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes things a lot easier moving forward for everybody, and really appreciate the effort in putting this together. I'm going to presume when I hear you say you're going to reach out to these other small towns, communities, and that makes this a living document that will be revised as you work with those communities. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This plan is a 5-year plan. However, this can be updated yearly or as needed,
Yes, Steve.
but it is a 5-year plan.
Very good. The other thing is that I heard that was especially interesting was the collaboration between the other counties. Now, experiencing the last big county emergency plan, i.e. COVID, that I think caught many counties in a loop in that. One of the things learning through that was that the importance of the collaboration, working with our neighboring counties and keeping appraised, not only them with us with them. Do you feel comfortable that this 5-year plan includes those other counties?
Yes, I feel very confident about that, as well as I feel like there has been a division in many places. I'm working very hard on bringing everyone together. One of the main things coming up is our THIRA. And I invite all of you to attend that. It's going to be quite the affair. And we are going to have a great presence in that.
Good.
I so appreciate all the support I've received, and I've had many agencies come forward and want to participate. And I am so grateful for that. and I am taking great advantage of that.
Well, thank you very much. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I am looking for a motion then for the adoption of the Region 4 Hazard Mitigation Plan 2022 as presented by Ms. Covey.
Mr. Chairman, I will make that motion. And again, congratulations. I know you're doing a good job and we appreciate having you on board.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll just take a comment to say, once again, echo the sentiments of my commissioners and congratulate you, Emily, on your new position. I know you've been there for a while and having that chance to step up. I'm really excited to see what you do. Really excited to see the collaboration with the counties, as Commissioner Wendling said, but also the incorporation of the smaller communities, I think is very vital to the success of this and to us as a whole. And then the last thing I'd just like to say is reading through the mitigation plan, I thought it was very thoughtful and very well thought out and very pointed. So I do appreciate that. So with that, any other discussion? Okay, if no other discussion, all in favor with an eye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much,
Very much.
Emily, and thank you, Joe.
How's the cow chute working out? I went to the workshop, on the, the cattle corral.
We haven't had to use it yet.
Oh.
We're training a lot of people on
Okay.
it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay, all right. Back on.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. All right, up next, tab E, which would be Dave Mead and the museum staff. Come up, and as you come to the podium, you know the drill, Dave. Introduce yourself
do.
and where you're from.
Dave Mead, Director of Sweetwater County Museum. Thank you for having us, Commissioner Lloyd, Commissioner Wendling, Commissioner Tolman. And thanks also for improving our budget, keeping us open for another year. And the good news is I'm not here to ask you for any more money. What I do want to get from you all is your approval, and we need a signature. And I will let our curator, Amanda Benson, talk to you about that. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Amanda Benson, Curator, Sweetwater County Historical Museum. And before you is a letter just briefly stating that we acknowledging that we are an entity of Sweetwater County, that we are a component unit. And this is for a collections assessment for preservation program, also known as a CAP program through the American Institute for Conservation. And generally what this program does is that we would bring in two assessors. One assessor is a collections assessor and the other is a building assessor. They'll work together and they'll provide us a collections preservation assessment for the museum and its collections. And the primary reason why we are wanting to get into this program is because we have a few resources such as the new studio collection that we as a staff don't have the time or resources to properly process it as it is now. And we would like to potentially get grant funding through more competitive grants like IMLS, so a lot of federal grants, and having a preservation assessment like this will make our application a lot stronger than we have tried in the past. And right now we're just right there in the application process. And because we are a government entity, they require this letter from the commissioners, basically just acknowledging our existence. And in the packet that I've sent out to you, it includes all the costs. We would be falling within the 250,000 to 750,000 institution budget range. So that'd be $3,800 per assessor. And I do want to point out that this is not a grant. So none of the money would be coming to us directly. It would be paid from the American Institute for Conservation directly to the assessors. And I can answer any questions if you have them.
So any questions? Any other questions for the museum? I have one question, and this and it could be for either of you or even Mr. De Leon. I apologize. It's just kind of a letter, something we've done historically, John, in support of some of the component agencies when they were looking at extra funding, grant funding, those concepts.
I don't know that it's been done historically or not. I think.
Mhm. And then your legal take on it also. So
Mhm.
thank you.
But set aside, what I'm saying is you've done them in the past.
No.
We've
Yeah.
never been asked to submit.
So yeah, that I didn't recall one having been done in the past. It is similar in nature. The way that this particular letter is written, I think it's written well in that what it says is that the library, it identifies the statutes under which the library was created, which is just a matter of fact.
Mhm.
And then it also identifies that they are a component unit, which, as we've discussed before, is more of an accounting term than a legal term per se. And so that would be a factual accounting term to use. And so there isn't necessarily any direct implication made in the letter other than the accounting inference that is contained and the statutes that were used for identification purposes. So I think it would be you can see where it has value to them in their application process.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions for the museum?
I will, Commissioner Wood, I will mention one thing. When we were asked to write this letter, and we were in conversation with Sally, I said, "Well, is there already a letter like this that we can use as a template?" She said, "No." And so actually Amanda composed this, so now you have a template.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the museum? All right, hearing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Wendling.
I do have a question for our attorney. On the letter, John, do you have a copy of the letter to Miss Elizabeth Handwork
I do.
Kurt? Okay, go to the, oh, dear Elizabeth, 1, 2, 3, third paragraph down.
Okay.
No, second paragraph. I'm sorry. It's organized and governed under Title 18, Chapter 10, Article 1, Statutes 1810-101 and 1810-102. Allow county commissioners to create archaeological, geological, and historical museums and levy a tax on taxable valuation of the property in the county for the construction, maintenance, and support of the museum or collection of exhibits. The way I read that, that's the present taxation that comes out of our present 12 mil levy. It's not a new tax.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. I just wanted to point that out and get clarification, because if anybody in the public reads this, they might think, hey, we authorized like a special district, additional taxation, but it's going to still come into the 12 mil and have oversight by the county commissioners. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? All right, we'll take a motion for a request of a letter signifying the Sweetwater County Historical Museum as a component aid unit of Sweetwater County government, and allow the chairman to sign.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wendling.
I'll make a motion that we approve the letter of acknowledgement to Miss Kurt of the Sweetwater County Historical Museum as a county component unit of the Sweetwater County, Wyoming government, and authorize the chairman to sign.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you guys very much for coming and keep up the great work at the museum.
Yes, and thank you for all your support.
Tab F will be Mr. Legursky, possibly Chad Banks, but it doesn't look like he's up. So just Mr. Legursky then, and then which we'll be hearing about a proclamation for the grass area 333 Broadway Street. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Legursky.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. And no, Chad could not make it today, and he apologizes for that. What you have before you is a proclamation for the grass area at 333 Broadway at the Health and Human Services Building. Chad contacted me a couple weeks ago, and they're using that area for the brown bag concert series. They'd like to use it for a couple other areas, and the problem that they're having with it is describing it to people. So they figured if they came up with a name, they could advertise it as such and actually put, you know, some reference to that area instead of the grassy area over by 333 Broadway. And so what you have before you is a proclamation that basically lays out why this needs to be done. I put in a time limit of 5 years. John and I kind of threw that around just to see, hey, do we want this forever, or do we maybe want to change it at some point? We can delete that or not. The blank line is for you guys to fill in the name. I gave you the options that Chad had, you know, off of Facebook's the 5 that he liked. And there's 5 options down at the bottom of the first page, and you guys can pick one of those and we can fill them in. We can change it if you want it to go forever, if you want it to go shorter than 5 years. We just thought 5 years was a good round number, no other reason.
Mr. Chairman, can you have him read the 5 for the record?
Yes. Broadway Commons, Community Commons, the Community Courtyard, Corner Commons, and Sweetwater Square.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Legursky?
This brown bag concert series, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Legursky, that originally was held down there between the old bank and the other businesses.
On Bank Court.
Yeah. They've boarded up the bank. Is that they're waiting for more money so they can continue on that project, or are they going to open that back up?
I don't know. I know they boarded it up because they're waiting for phase 2 and funding for that.
Funding.
But we already had the advertisement and everything going in the MOU through you guys for this summer. So that's why they continue to keep it where it
All right,
was.
very good. So this would allow them to continue it there or take it back to that square next year.
Correct. Or other things, you know, we've had other requests. The Rock Springs PD has a request to be able to use that area to do childcare seats and stuff like that.
Makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. All right, thanks. Yeah, that's okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Legursky?
I think the main thing that, you know, Chad and I talked about is the more we can attract people downtown, either Rock Springs or Green River, and just get foot traffic down there, it helps out with everything, and being able to say, hey, come down to this area instead of the grassy area on the northeast side of 333 Broadway is a lot easier to do.
It creates a destination.
It does.
So if there are no other questions, I'll take comments from my fellow commissioners that they have a preference for a name that's been presented for the grassy area over by the Health and Human Service Building. So I'll just start with you, Commissioner Toman. Any thoughts?
Well, I'd vote for Broadway Commons or Sweetwater Square. Broadway Commons might be good because it kind of identifies the street area.
Okay. Commissioner Wendling, your thoughts on naming the grassy area?
You know, I'm one of those that you said Chad, Mr. Legursky, Chad put it out on Facebook and
Facebook, and there was a bunch, and he whittled it down to these 5 that were the most
okay,
common.
which one had the?
I don't know that.
Don't know that.
I don't know that. And he didn't put these 5 out there as a list and say, hey, which ones does everybody like?
I'll be honest with you. I just, you know, it's Sweetwater County Health and Human Services Building, Sweetwater County property, and that type of thing. I just think if we keep it Sweetwater Square, they'll associate it with the Sweetwater County building. I like Broadway, just as Commissioner Toman brought up, but the minute I think of Broadway Commons, I think it could happen any place on Broadway Street. This narrows it down to a specific attachment to a building, so I would put Sweetwater Square as my number one and Broadway Commons as two.
And I would actually having the same thought process as Commissioner Wendling. I do like Sweetwater Square based on, I think it has a ring, there's something to it that's there. And I like the fact that it is the only Sweetwater County building in that area. And so it does identify a more specific destination point. And I think, and I do like the Broadway Commons, but for the same reason, I think it's general, but I also, I actually kind of like the corner commons knowing the location, but my preference was definitely Sweetwater Square. I think that identifies the building. It gives definition. And like I said, I think the purpose of naming an area like this is to create a destination and a known spot of where you're going to go. And I think it's more clearly marked. And I think, and knowing it's being used for other purposes that outside of the brown bag, I think would be there. So, so we've had some discussion. So I guess I'm at a point where I'll take a motion on what we should name the grassy area by the Sweetwater County Health and Human Service Building.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wendling.
out of respect for my fellow commissioner, I would like to make a motion to approve the proclamation as is, with the name being put in at the very bottom as Sweetwater Square.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would gladly second that.
Thank you.
Doc, it's not a point of conflict. I support that totally.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will just say, I'm really glad we don't have conflict over the grassy areas. So, but no, awesome. I am. So with no other further comment. Okay. All in favor, with an aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We now have concerts at Sweetwater Square. All right. Thank
Mr.
you,
Chairman,
Mr. Legursky.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yeah.
I would just like to thank Gene Legursky for his many duties. And he's had a challenge in Eden Farson with the parks, and he's doing a great job of getting it fixed up. And the playground looks great at Eden Valley. So I just wanted to point that out. And the citizens just wanted to know what was happening. And I tried to explain there just been challenges with the irrigation system. So thank you very much. We appreciate all of the work you do for all of the hats you wear.
No
So
problem. And
thank
naming
you
a
very
grassy
much.
area is the easiest, so. It was
Thanks.
kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys were on Facebook, but if you saw all the different names, there were some interesting ones on there. The
Yeah.
grassy knoll was probably my favorite. But
Grassy knoll.
I will be honest, I did everything I could not to make a reference to the grassy knoll, and then Gene. makes
Well, I
it.
actually liked Hay Meadows, but there's so many Hay Meadows running around, and the connotation with the bank and everything like that was kind of neat.
I think when you talk about grassy meadows and you talk, or grassy knoll, hay meadows, whatever, brings us back to the 70s. And
Yeah.
I'd rather just keep that as a memory, not immediately a blowback.
Doc, we've always talked about moving forward, right?
Right.
So that's a different one. So, all right, we'll move on to from grassy knolls to license and access agreements with Atlas Technical Consultants, which is tab G. Mr. Legursky, you're back up.
What this is, commissioners, is an agreement to be able to drill 2 monitoring wells 40 feet deep on out at the events complex. I've talked to Candy Pendleton about this. This will not cause them a problem. Where the area is at is on the very south side of their building, or south side of their property, abutting the industrial area that's right there. The reason they want to do this is because they're trying to get a mitigation plan for that area, and they need to get some background information on the aquifer and other areas around that, so they can establish what the baseline is before they can come up with a cleanup plan for the industrial area in a couple areas.
Any questions for Mr. Legursky?
Oh, who's paying for the wells? Who's drilling the wells?
The state is, and they've contracted with Atlas Technical Consultants. So they're doing everything. Atlas will be basically 1 time a month for the foreseeable year. They will be coming in, testing the water, doing some tests, and then it'll space out a little bit after that. They only think it's going to be for 2 or 3 years, just for background information.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll take a motion on the license and access agreement with Atlas Technical Consultants. And that motion should include to allow the chairman to sign.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wendling,
I'll make a motion. We approve the license and access agreement between Sweetwater County and Atlas Technical Consultants LLC, and allow the chairman to sign.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor with an eye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So it looks like, once again, Mr. Legursky, tab H, approval of the fiscal year 23 capital project and debt service list.
So a little bit of background on this. As you guys are well aware, you guys passed the budget last week with a total dollar amount for capital and debt service and everything rolled into that. As the capital committee, what we would like to do with your guys' permission is codify that total dollar amount with these projects that you guys have already seen. It's kind of a weird situation that we have when you guys actually approved everything that we asked for. This going forward, we'd like to do this every year. And then that way we know, and you guys know, and the public knows exactly what we're doing with that money. And if something underruns or overruns, then we come before you guys and say, hey, we had 9 projects on here. You guys approved the first 7. We would like to do 8 and 9 with the money that either fell short or whatever on that, and just make it more transparent. What we did is we broke this up into core county, the debt service, and then component units capital, and broke all that up. This does match exactly what Ms. Berry presented to you guys in your resolution.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Legursky? I'll just start with, when we started this capital project committee a couple of years ago, the concept was to start really taking a look at and outlining really for a 1 to 5 year process, what projects were the most important, and to be able to carry those out in a method and be able to prioritize it with really being a living document, knowing the projects could come and go and level of importance. And I think one thing that we did, as you kind of move with a new process, you kind of learn the things that have to be changed as it is a living document. And I think one of the things we determined last year was just the importance of making sure this list was the list and that there were no alterations unless it did come through the Board of Commissioners. And so as we do this, the thought was, this allows us to solidify the list, and that any other changes or money coming out of this list would have to be designated by the commission. So,
and this just is everything, just for everybody's knowledge, just any capital over 10,000. The other 2 items that are typically in the budgets are in the actual budget items for the respective departments or elected officials' budgets.
and those are separate
are
from
separate
the
from this.
capital dollars that have been approved.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Legursky?
Gene, this has been a long haul. It started 8 years ago
Mhm.
and transitioned as you came aboard and that type of thing. And you've gotten departments and elected officials involved in it and that type of thing, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the capital committee has been essential. I mean, I'm just speaking in
Yeah.
behalf because we don't want to bring in anybody, but a lot of good ideas float around in that, a lot of foresight into, hey, where are we going to be in 5 years? And nobody has a crystal ball by any
No.
means, but at least we understand everybody else's projects, and then we can decide and bring them forward to you guys what we feel is important, instead of everybody fighting over money.
Do you feel it's kind of brought some efficiency to purchasing capital and that type of thing through the county?
I don't want to say purchasing, because I think Marty does a really good job, but as far as capital, I think it really does. And the other thing too, is it gets everybody together and we talk about projects and we can see, when I say, hey, I need to replace the AC, but then Sheriff Grossnickel says, hey, I need, I don't know, vests. Vests are probably more important than AC. We can make AC work around, vests aren't. But we can see that instead of saying, no, I need, and not even knowing, just seeing a pot of money in Sheriff Grossnickel's budget, not knowing what that's for. We can just sit and talk about it and go, no, my project can move down the list.
Yeah.
Doing different stuff like that, I
Well,
think is invaluable.
Yeah, I just think it'll become more invaluable as time goes on. So kudos to everybody that's working with you and making all that stuff happen. So
And
thank you.
I think the main thing with the capital committee is if we can start getting out, to that 5-year mark, and I know nobody has a crystal ball and it's tough, but we have some big capital items that will need to be addressed in the next 5-10 years. I keep pointing to this building. This building's 60 years old. It's in great structural shape. But if you look at the original blueprints of this building, the whole entire downstairs was made for storage. That's how the AC was set up. That's how the heating and everything, that's how the electrical was set up. We've done a great job of remodeling the building into offices, but you lose some efficiency. So we need to look, forward and do some stuff like that and get some stuff on some long-term lists.
And that planning probably should include that, I won't say possibility, but I think it's going to be more of an actual happening in the future. And that's the addition of that third judge, third courtroom. So, I mean, and I think that'll come quicker than 5 to 10 years. So I think it's important the group gets together and starts thinking about what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? I know, and that type of thing. So I think that's what's so valuable with that group is they'll continue to carry it on over time. It'll provide some consistency where electeds come and go and those avenues are lost. So thank you very much and tell your committee thanks.
And then Commissioner Winley, just something I think you had asked, have we found more efficiencies? I think one thing that I think being on that committee that I found is I think people are more reasonable when they're putting in requests, when you're doing it in front of all your peers and you're actually having discussions and hearing what everyone else needs. I think it makes you prioritize your own needs as you throw stuff out. So I think that's been good. And I think the other thing I saw is, and we're not quite ready to unveil this, but one of the things the Capital Committee was tasked with was to take a look at the concept of fleet vehicles in the county. And we've started working on that as a request to the board, knowing that at one point we almost had enough vehicles for every employee in the county and how we could become more efficient in that. And so we've actually been able to take a look at that and we'll have a proposal in the next month or so on that. So I think I've seen some really good work and I see, Mr. Wendling, as you talked about the courtroom, that's where I always give the concept that it has to be a living, breathing document, because that's an example of something that could come and change our plans. And that would go from not even being on the current list to probably being the number one item. So I do find a lot of value in that. So,
well, and there's always emergencies that happen, that we have to account for and stuff like that. I think the main thing is just the communication between, if you really look at the capital that's spent, myself, Sheriff Grossnickel and Tim Knight. I don't want to say we're capital hogs, but that's who typically spends the most capital. But getting together with everybody and going through that is invaluable.
Well, and the other thing you need to put on your list as time goes on is one of the probably to consider is a countywide for county branding. One single branding for the county. And I think the Capital Committee could do that pretty effectively without the influence of electeds.
We've kind of already discussed that a
Have
little
you?
bit.
Good.
Part of it was through the vehicle discussion,
Okay.
and how do we brand vehicles and do different stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it as a total picture. Thank you. Good job, Gene.
any other questions on the capital project and debt list from Mr. Ligursky?
Mr. Vice Chairman,
Yes,
Acting Chairman, what is your?
that'd be Mr. Chairman, just to
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Acting Chairman to everyone else, but
Mr.
Gene
Chairman.
Ligursky, that would be Mr. Chairman Roy Lloyd.
One thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention this is Christina and Bonnie have been working on a way that we're going to set these up in projects. So there's going to be just a big capital 2023. It's going to be broken down by department or elected and then each branch. So everybody will know exactly where they're at, auditing, stuff like that. You guys can look at it and know exactly where we're at on every single project. So that's a huge undertaking and a very important component of this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're at a point where we can take a motion on the approval of the fiscal year 23 capital project and debt service list as presented by Mr. Legursky.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will make the motion. I was trying to give Commissioner Wendling a chance, but you know. I will make the motion.
Thank you.
I don't want to ruin his good mood today.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor with an eye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Legursky. Up next, Mr. McLean. And he'll be discussing tab I, which is the request approval of Pareto Business Agreement. Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. This is a pretty straightforward item, administrative item. When you deliver healthcare, you have a number of component entities that provide services. As you know, a few years ago, when we had some really difficult times, we had a lot of large claims that affected our ability to get stop loss. We made a decision at that time to go with Pareto, which is a captive, which we won't get into today, but is a way of sharing the risk, much like we do with our property and liability insurance for stop loss. When you contract with entities, you have to, under the HIPAA rules, have to have an agreement called the Business Associate Agreement, which outlines how that protected health information will and will not be handled. And so each year we bring forth that agreement. This is that agreement with Pareto that governs how that protected health information will be handled. So with that, I'd take any questions, and I'd recommend the board to consider authorizing the chairman to sign that agreement.
Any questions for Mr. McLean? I guess, Mr. McLean, I have a question, and that's to start would be, we've used the same company for a long time for the stop loss, correct?
For a few years, this was one of the changes we made. If you remember, when we had some really high, large losses as a way to contain that exposure. It's been effective at doing that, especially the lasered claims. But again, regardless who we used, we would have to have a business associate agreement with them, and all other diversified, for example, we have a business associate agreement, so that everyone understands how PHI, protected health information, will be handled as that relationship is manifest.
Any other questions for Mr. McLean? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Do I have any motion on what's the request approval of the Pareto business agreement for the stop loss insurance?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the agreement and authorize the chairman to sign if appropriate.
It is appropriate in that. So there's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, we'll go with an aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McLean. Up next, tab J. We're going to ratify the CLG comments on the NOI to prepare EIS for Dry Creek Trona Mine project. And that will be presented by Commissioner Toman.
The letter's in the packet, the BLM process. There are two mines being proposed. One's on private, one's on federal land. And this is the start of that process through the BLM. So I would make a motion to ratify the comments that have been submitted on our behalf through the Coalition of Local Governments.
Any questions for Commissioner Toman? Hearing none, I'll take a motion on the issue.
I would make that motion.
I have a motion. What's the exact motion? Will you explain that out, Ms. Toman?
I just did, but it's to ratify comments submitted on our behalf through the Coalition of Local Governments regarding the Dry Creek Trona Mine project. And this is in relation to the area, the process being started by the Bureau of Land Management on the federal portion of the project, just outlining our concerns with vegetation, wildlife, livestock grazing, other issues in the area, watershed,
Okay.
et cetera.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor with an eye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Up next is tab K, which is scheduled for 9:35. We are a few minutes ahead because it is consideration of the 2022 specific purpose tax resolution. I'd like to recommend we take an 8 or 9 minute break. So we do that right on time because I do think this is a significant community issue that we should keep on time in case there are people that are paying attention to that. So with that, we'll take a break and be back at 9:35.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And John, you ready? Block Mary, okay.
Ready or not?
I'll be bringing us back in session. We are on tab K, which is the consideration of the 2022 specific purpose tax resolution. We now have joining us by Zoom Commissioner Schoenfeld, and I will let her kind of take the direction in this discussion.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me, Mr. Chairman?
We can, Commissioner Schoenfeld, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you.
Right.
So first and foremost, I just wanted to ask and see if there were any questions on the resolution that you have before you. Okay. So
Commissioner Schoenfeld?
yeah.
I do have a question. It says for the following projects in the amount of 83,511,570. For whatever reason, I thought after our last meeting that was below 80, like in the 79 range. Am I mistaken, or did something get added up, or can you explain that? Or was I just off?
Absolutely. So the project total is under 80 million. That includes bonding. So if you look at the project totals on the list that we have, that has been updated. Each project total includes the bonding amount, or each city municipality total includes the bonding amount in that. And that was provided by Alan Matzloff, and the calculations and everything were done there.
Thank you. That was my question. So I'll turn it to the other commissioners who, anyone have any other questions on the resolution presented by Commissioner Schoenfeld regarding the 6 penny? The 1% specific purpose sales tax. Let me be more clear.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Commissioner Wendling.
Yeah. Commissioner Schoenfeld.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just so I get it, just black and white, that it was the bonding costs that brought it back up over 90 million or over 80 million.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we had a lengthy discussion about bonding and the fact that inflation costs over the next few years, that they would probably not allow some of the smaller municipalities to complete their projects. And some of these projects were ones that needed to be done before 5 years was up. So.
Okay, yeah, and it'll be, we actually won't start collecting money until after July 1. Is that correct, of next year, 23?
The date, John DeLeon, help me. I don't have the date. It's in the resolution.
That's fine.
The
All
date's
right,
in
I
the
didn't see
resolution
it.
when we would start.
Okay, yeah, there's amount of 83,511,570. Okay, very good. Question.
Yes.
How have the 4 small towns been brought before their councils? I know one of them showed up this morning. I can't remember which one.
Wamsutter has approved the resolution. Everybody has it. Everybody has told me when they're going to be putting it in front of their councils. Rock Springs and Green River are going in front of their councils this evening. And I've had a lengthy discussion with Attorney DeLeon about the fact that we could include in our resolution that it is contingent on the city of Rock Springs and the city of Green River passing the resolution, that which kind of safeguards us. So if one of the big players chooses to not approve the resolution, we have the opportunity to revisit it as the county, which was what our hope was in the first place.
Deadline for approving this?
July 20th.
What's today? The 5th?
So our next meeting would be the day before that. Doc.
Day before that? Okay.
Correct.
All right. The last time we kind of, and I didn't pick up on it because I was chairman, but we went ahead and approved before everybody else and then got hung out there alone, which, that was how it worked out, because the majority of those towns and cities wanted to move forward and that type of thing, but it made a difference, a whole lot of difference, and it cost us a lot of money for the election. You know, not as much probably as what this may, but Commissioner Shanefield, I'm real reluctant to move forward on this only from the standpoint until we know where those cities and towns are at, because by statute, I think we are the veto, we can veto, or the vetoing body for whether it's special purpose or general or any other taxes, mill levies or that type of thing. But I would like to see what thoughts are of the other commissioners about, you know, even, I know we can make a motion on contingency, but I'd rather, you know, consider the fact of possibly tabling this until we know where the towns and cities are, even if we had to have a special meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner Shanefield.
Thank you. And Doc, I agree with you 100%. There seems to be some confusion, or I guess difference in opinion from the City of Rock Springs Council. And John DeLeon, can you explain kind of how you did to me? It's not statutory but it has been a procedural process that the county, and this is according to them, I wasn't here during obviously the past specific purpose tax, but that the commissioners had previously been the first to approve, and then they would approve after that. And obviously we know statutorily that's not required. And so that was my one concern, is that I don't know if the City of Rock Springs will discuss it or address it if we have not moved forward with something today. And that was why my recommendation was to do it contingent.
Attorney DeLeon, will you address that?
Sure. So I think Commissioner Shanefield is saying it well in that it's there's sort of a different set of thought processes. And I would describe it that way versus saying a difference of opinion so as not to overemphasize that point. I think that the main premise in terms of the different perspectives is that I think that one entity or maybe a few entities, whatever the case may be, thought that historically, so as a historical perspective versus a legal perspective, the perspective was that historically the commission would take the lead on this, that they would provide a resolution, and that the cities would follow that lead, and that so that they would have that understanding in advance. So I think that the cities and or town would want to be able to know if in fact the board was approving this process before they addressed it at their board, at their council meeting. The counterpoint, when you're putting forward a historical argument or perspective, is that historically, while the commission, the board has been the first to provide a resolution, taking the lead on the resolution, they also historically knew which cities were involved. And so the goal, I think, that Commissioner Shanefield is alluding to is to avoid that which came first, the chicken or the egg, who takes that first step. is to be able to move forward somehow, to be able to give that representation to the other entities without getting caught into different legal interpretations, which there doesn't seem to be a different legal interpretation. There is an argument that's put out there that that identifies this as a county construct. But again, I don't think that that's the main hang up. I think it's just trying to stick with the way it's historically been done. And that's why I think Commissioner Shanefield is saying that it may be beneficial to trying to look for a way to be able to satisfy everybody's concerns. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I just breathing.
So I did want to just to identify one other point there. I think that if the board does choose to move forward, subject to approval by the governing bodies of specifically Green River and Rock Springs, and or all the governing bodies of the incorporated municipalities, are a couple different motions that you could consider to be able to give specifically tonight the two cities the ability to know that as long as they are in approval, that this board would submit that to the voters. So, and clearly Commissioner Shanefield has worked with all the municipalities, incorporated municipalities, in order to come up with the projects that are presented in that resolution. Commissioner Shanefield, does that address your concerns?
It does. Thank you.
Commissioner Wendling, any follow-up questions from you?
Well, I struggle with it because when I take a look at what's with this being an election year, especially in the city of Rock Springs, knowing how some voted with the general tax and could possibly lead into the specific purpose tax, it concerns me, that they may not pass it, and that type of thing. And I truly believe there's, excuse me. I truly believe there's probably some council members that will vote against it because of their possibilities as they are thinking about moving forward with their political careers and that type of thing. But I still think I understand where it's coming from, and I respect it and I get it. But we're the Board of County Commissioners. We are the last step. Not the city of Green River, not the town of Bear Oil, not Superior or Rock Springs. We are it, and I think it's only should be notified that they need to understand that I understand what's happened historically, but I'm not sure how we would have voted with the general tax had we known Rock Springs was going to bail out on us, because then it become an economic decision versus, moving forward, because we know we can't get any of these special purpose or general or anything without the people of Rock Springs. But this is critical right now as to that. And I understand, I have no problem with contingency on that, but at what point do we begin to take our role as what it should be versus being dictated what our role is? Thank you.
Commissioner Toman, your thoughts?
Well, I don't believe in additional taxes, but I do believe in maintaining our infrastructure, and I think are at a critical point with water, septic, and roads. And it's not a matter of less taxes or more taxes. It's a matter of who's going to pay it. There are going to be special assessments to cover roads and septic and water if this 1 penny tax does not pass. So I think the burden is less by adopting the 1 penny specific purpose tax, which identifies the most urgent needs in the county for the water and septic and roads. So based on that, I think it's just a matter of choosing how you want to pay the bill. So for that reason, I would support the specific purpose tax as it lightens the burden for everyone.
Commissioner Tillman, what are your thoughts and specific direction of what Commissioner Wendling was speaking about and making a motion today, or waiting and holding on a motion until we hear what the resolutions and the decisions of the rest of the cities and municipalities are?
Well, I think we can be brave and take the step and take the initiative. The cities will do what they're going to do. It's on their backs if they don't approve it tonight. And we're too far down the road. The decision is up to the voters. It's not up to us. And I think we've gone this far into the process. It's not going to matter if we approve it today or we wait till next meeting. I think we should move forward, give the cities clear direction, and go on.
Okay. Commissioner Sandfield, any thoughts you want to add before I throw mine out there as chair?
Mr. Chairman, I think that Commissioner Tillman said it well, and I think that we could get into, for lack of better words, a pissing match with, order and, authority and things like that. And we as a committee have worked diligently for hours and meetings and hours and meetings, and gone back and forth with projects. And, I think that now is the time. And I think that taking the direction and building that contingency so that we don't get stuck between a rock and a hard place. When we discussed this at the very beginning as a committee, we decided that 50% of municipalities was not enough. We needed everybody to be on the same page. And we still stand by that. And we've worked diligently together with all of the municipalities to put this proposition together, or this resolution together, after many stakeholder meetings, many community engagement meetings, the survey, and everything else. And so I think that being able to bring us all together to get this resolution to where it is has been a huge undertaking. And it's been a lot of dedication of time and services to, to put this together as a collective committee. So that's all I have to say.
I guess my time for my thoughts. I struggle a little bit on let me just start with the timeliness. And I agree a little bit with Commissioner Wendling. I think part of my job as a commissioner is to vet and listen and gain information. And I think it's hard to make a decision if we should move forward to this until I hear what the rest of the municipalities truly are going to do as a whole. Part of the information gathering is, does everyone agree with it, and then move forward, and then we make a decision. Because if you have 2 or 3 municipalities that choose, hey, we're not going to do it, that can affect and direct my change in my decision and making it look differently without that information. So that's one concern I have, and one agreement I do have with with Commissioner Wendling. I do also see where Mary's coming from a little bit in the concept of moving forward and taking the step. But I also believe this is a huge decision, and I struggle with this on the 6 penny for a couple of reasons. And I struggle because I truly believe in governance by the small. I believe I'm a we the people guy. Like, we should be making votes to make our own direction. And because of that, part of me believes to put the vote out to the voters and let them make their own decision, knowing that there isn't really an additional cost because the ballot will be out. But I also believe I was elected to listen to the constituents and vet it out also. And I will tell you, I have not had any support really provided to me in what I hear of people supporting the 6 penny tax in my discussions, outside of people that are tied to the municipalities. And because of that, I'm fearful of that for a couple of reasons. even though I believe in letting people make the vote and move forward in their own direction, I was elected to vet out and listen to the people. And when the majority of the people have told me, hey, we're not going to move forward with this, I kind of get in a philosophical conundrum, to be honest with you. With that also being said, I do see the value of the projects, but I also worry if this 6 penny initiative is to fail, this will be the second 6 penny type initiative. And I know I should call it the 1%. I apologize for not clarifying that, to fail. And we may not be able to ever get that back. And there may be times it truly is needed. So those are my pieces. So, but going back to really what was originally brought up by Commissioner Wendling is I would be my preference would be to say, I want to hear what the rest of the municipalities are going to do before I make a decision to move forward. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. So I guess other discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wendling.
Yeah, Commissioner Shanefield.
Yes.
You're in those meetings with those entities on, more than we are. And I think out of respect for the work that, out of respect for the work that you're doing with those people, with those representatives from those communities and those towns and cities, tell me what your sense is with the 2 big cities. I believe the 4 small towns are aboard. I haven't heard any negative from them. So tell me, based on your conversations from their council representations, where do you truly believe where the 2 cities are?
So I believe that the only concern that I have in a municipality passing it is the city of Rock Springs. I have had no negative comments back from the city of Green River. And I think the city of Rock Springs is going to be a tight vote for the reasons that you stated earlier. But I do believe from discussion with them that it will pass, and it will pass by a slim margin, but that's my assumption. I mean, we've had discussions with the majority of the people that are no votes, and they've made it very clear why. And it's pretty interesting to me, because it's not that they don't support the projects, and it's not that they don't see the need. It's that they're concerned about timing. And we were concerned about timing before, and the timing when we removed this from the last potential conversation of putting it on the ballot would have been better than where it is now. And we would have been halfway through these projects, and they would have cost our community less money in the long run. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, in answer of that, less
with
money.
that, and where I think that the other municipalities are.
All right, thank you. Well, the projects are gonna, if they don't move forward through a voter's vote, they're gonna cost more money down the road anyhow. And they'll be able to do, again, we're finding out less, they'll be able to do less and it costs them more. So I believe my questions have been answered, and through the discussion, if we get a motion, I think you'll sense what I have to say and the direction I'll go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other discussion from any of our commissioners? With that, I'm ready to take a motion from anyone on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, could you read me what the resolution number is so that I can make sure that I have it correctly? I am not in front of a computer.
Hey, no problem, Commissioner Chairman. I'll make it easy for you. Sorry, and I went too fast. Resolution number 22-07-CC-02. And you want me to read the rest, and you can just do what I so move?
Please do.
Yes.
Okay, you want me to read the whole resolution?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Oh, not the whole resolution,
Okay,
just the
Okay, gotcha.
bold, just the bold. That's
Okay.
part of the motion.
Okay, resolution number 22-07-CC-02. A resolution approving a proposition to impose a 1% specific purpose sales and use tax in Sweetwater County, state of Wyoming, for the exclusive purpose of funding specific purposes for specific amounts. The proposition to be voted on at the general election to be held on November 8th 2022.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Shanefield.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as you just stated, with the contingency that the city of Rock Springs and the city of Green River both approve the same resolution prior to the July 20th deadline.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Point of order,
Commissioner Wendling.
Mr. De Leon, will that work? Is that the stipulation? Before we second it, if we need to amend it.
Commissioner Shanefield? I would.
I lost
We're gonna
hearing
get-
what Commissioner Wendling said. I
Oh,
apologize.
I want to make sure, Mr. De Leon, Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanefield, I want to make sure that that motion is written with the, or made with the stipulation clear. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Shanefield, your motion, you said approve the same. Was that the motion?
Yes, the same.
So I guess I would just, I think that works. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Wendling, I would just clarify, and I don't think there's a distinction, but clarify that I think that the motion allows that their resolution, while the same, is their own and not one and the same. They're the same in the fact that they contain the same language. So that was just a point of discussion that took place with Commissioner Shanefield and some of the other parties that they will in fact have their own. It will simply have the same language.
So we're good
That's correct.
if we move forward.
Yes.
So we currently have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just want to make a comment that I will be voting no, because I would like to see it come through the municipalities to have that information before I make that decision. I understand of history versus statute, but I also believe in learning from our mistakes. And I think last time when we passed this before everyone else, it created issues that that were hard to deal with and other hardships that we wouldn't have had if we would have waited to have that motion and those decisions from the other counties and municipalities prior to that decision. I just wanted to state why I will be voting no, my position. So with that, all in favor, with an eye?
Discussion.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Wendling.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. First of all, the first thing I'd like to just say is this is a resolution of putting the special purpose tax before the voters, for the voters to decide, period. Commissioners aren't deciding if voters are going to pay a 1% tax. The voters will decide if the voters are paying a 1% tax. And they'll also decide if it's passed that people visiting this county will also pay that tax and help share the burden, as well as those people that come from other counties visiting us too. So this is a shared opportunity. Again, it's more important to understand that not any of the town councils or city councils or the Board of County Commissioners are approving a tax. The group is approving to put the tax to the voters, and the voters are choosing to tax not only themselves, but the visitors that come in to pay this 1% specific tax that goes directly to nothing else. Infrastructure, which is roads, water and sewer. And what else was it, Mary? You said?
Roads, water and sewer.
Yeah, those three things, period. And that type of thing. And also allows it to be bonded. And we have stated that with the bonding, that it will be about a little over 93 million.
83.
I'm sorry, $83,511,570. I can't risk getting tied up with either of the two cities because they make a difference whether this goes through or not. I cautioned, I did get to say what I wanted to say, Commissioner Lloyd, and I don't think I'm wrong, but I don't think that I'd be making the right decision for the people of Sweetwater County to hold off. If the attorney tells us that we have a contingency in place to where we get to revisit it, if the two big cities, one of them does not improve it, and he says legally we're covered, then I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable, and that type of thing. But I think it's important for us to know moving forward as commissioners that if it doesn't get passed, that should be a sign to us that in the future, I don't think it'll come up and for me again, because it'll have to happen before January 1st. So I can say that tongue in cheek. So for the future commissioners, I think it's important that we continue to learn from that. I'm a little leery, but we got a contingency in place. I want to let the voters make the decision. I'm not going to make it for themselves, but I'm going to go on record. I want this county to have these infrastructure things taken care of. So if this is passed, or if these resolutions are passed by the 7 entities and it makes the ballot, I will be checking the box supporting that the citizens of Sweetwater County deserve water and sewer updates as well as their roads. And the people that use them from out of states, out of counties will help pay for those as they visit our community. We deserve those things. We deserve better things than that. And we've got state legislators in this audience, and I'd like to welcome Senator Hicks here. Thank you, sir, for being here today. But also we know that if we want to get anything done in this county or in our small towns or cities, it's up to us to make it happen. The state has bigger things to worry about, although we wished they would worry about us and help us more than they have. But in reality, we have to accept what it is. The only thing we're going to get done is if we do it ourselves and make this community a better place so that we can bring more people in. And it's not that it's not a good place. It's a great place, but we need to have the infrastructure to support those people coming in as well as for economic growth. But let's get the infrastructure in place. Let's make it happen. So as much as I concerned and things I've said in the discussion part, or not discussion, but questioning part, in the discussion part right now, I'm letting you know that as reluctant as I am, I think the right thing to do for the voters of this county is let them decide. So with the stipulation, I will be voting yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Toman.
Well, just one final message to the voters. Due to the slump in the sales tax collection during COVID, a lot of our infrastructure projects fell behind. And someone will pay. Water, septic, and roads are failing. There will be special assessments to cover those costs, and it's going to be a heavy burden on a few people if this tax does not pass. If we pass it, everybody pays a small share through the sales tax, but otherwise the special assessments on the property tax owners could be very heavy. So I just want to remind the voters of that. And I am not in favor of more taxes, but I'm also not in favor of having our basic needs fail, and they are going to fail.
With that, I'll just make one last comment. That'd be, I just encourage voters, because this will, looks like it will go 3-1. Minimally, that it's your job to vote and govern yourself and make the vote you feel is best. It's not what I feel is best, or as Commissioner Wendling did, or Commissioner Tolman, it's your vote. So whatever happens, get to the polling boxes and check the mark you want. Any further discussion? With that being said, all in favor?
Roll call.
Okay, we'll roll call. So we'll go roll call. We'll start on the screen. Commissioner Schoenfeld.
Yes.
That's a yes. Commissioner Wendling.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lloyd. No, for mentioned reasons. Motion passes 3-1. With that, we'll move on to tab L. We're a little bit behind. I apologize, but we do have a petition to the Sweetwater County Commissioners for the submission to the voters of a 1 mill levy for the lands in the Sweetwater County that are in the Little Snake River Conservation District. So I'm not sure who's presenting. I know there's a lot of you. So as you come to the podium, please announce your name, who you're with, and you know what? Let's just name our guests so we're ahead of the game. So come on up.
Hey, hi. Well, thank you for having us here today. I'm Jack Cobb. I'm chairman of the Little Snake River Conservation District. Been on the board for about 32 years. 5th generation rancher. My son's be the 6th, his son's the 7th on our cattle ranch there in Savory. Just want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to have this petition in front of you today. Just a quick history of the Little Snake River Conservation District. I appreciate Commissioner Wendland's words a little bit ago about taking care of yourself. That's what Little Snake River does. We're a small community. We don't wait to be, handed out gifts, and we just take care of what we need to take care of. And in doing this petition, that's just another step that we thought was necessary to bring it about for not just, our valley, but also Sweetwater County. So we welcome the opportunity to do this. And I'd like to just introduce my conservation district board that's here today, then just to help speed it up. We have a Tom Chant from Little Snake River Conservation District and Bob Davis also from Little Snake River Conservation District. I'm going to turn it over to Larry Hicks. He's our natural resource coordinator. He's been with us for, I think, 30 years now. I hired him back in 1991 and had a bet with a fellow board member that he'd last more than 6 months. And I've won that bet. So been with us for 30 years. So
Wow.
He's going to present a little presentation to describe what we do as a conservation district. And I've been proud of what we've done in my 32 years of being on the board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry. And
thank you, commissioners. And we do appreciate the opportunity to come before you. And it was very interesting listening to the previous discussion. And I would commend you on the level of debate that you had. I wish sometimes in my other capacity that we were as cordial in our debate, and particularly when it comes to these questions of whether we should or shouldn't tax ourselves. But I think it's important today is to what we're here for is to look at a petition for a conservation mill tax. But I'm sure as Sweetwater County commissioners and your responsibility that you have for the whole county are wondering why. Is this before you today? So what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of rundown of the history of what the Little Snake Conservation District's affiliation with Sweetwater County is. And I think Jack alluded to it earlier. We're a bi-county area over there. Almost all of those ranches in that area have grazing allotments in Sweetwater County. We have an oil and gas industry that's intimately connected. Many of the people that live in that valley that work in oil and gas, we've had several large companies that their base operations that they run out of there are Carbon County, Sweetwater. So our economic hub is really both counties. And our statutory provisions is to look after those natural resource issues out there And kind of initially conservation districts were conceptually set up on watershed boundaries, and sometimes political boundaries just don't make sense to natural resources when you got a grazing allotment or a stream or migratory wildlife herd or a oil and gas road that crosses both county lines. And so for us, we look at kind of a watershed type approach within an economic realm of whatever that range of focus is. So, but what I would like to do is just give you a little bit of history of our affiliation of working in Sweetwater County and working with Sweetwater County. So just, this is the current map of what it would look at those lands that have been transferred into Sweetwater County into the Little Snake River Conservation District. And again, the rationale for that, when we went through this, and a little history there for, we've had these discussions going on for 10 years with the Sweetwater County Conservation District Board. We've done a lot of collaborative work with them in the past, but most of that area, those home ranches are based in that, their hay bases in the Little Snake River Valley with that irrigated. Many of the oil and gas companies that work out of that valley, that's kind of their working hub, and that greater Wamsutter, the stuff out there towards Adobe Town. But this gives you an idea of what that annex, or I won't say annexation, but where the district boundaries through agreement based on these working principles was established. So, a little too quick for the computer, just a little history. One of the programs that we've really utilized quite a bit in the last, and I'm going to go back 20 years, is water development. As you guys know, you have one of the most arid areas within the state of Wyoming and the western United States, and water development is a key component to both our livestock and our wildlife industries. These are some of the projects that we've done in the last couple of years in Sweetwater County. Just shows you a range, a lot of solar wells, pipelines, ponds, stock water projects, with contributions from numerous entities involved in those projects. Just a little history on our small water projects. This goes back. So in the last 20 years, total project wise is about $1.7 million. About $1 million of that was grant money that was brought into Sweetwater County to effectuate those projects. Those other contributions came from entities like those permittees. The Bureau of Land Management contributed to some of those. Early on, one of the biggest contributors was British Petroleum Company out of Wamsutter. So when you see that $600,000 component of that, BP put in $360,000 that we administered to go out there. And at that time, British Petroleum was plugging all those artesian wells in that greater Wamsutter area that we had developed whole grazing rotations around. You remember the sage grouse issue that was popping up. They provided those mesic areas for sage grouse to go in there and do some of their brood rearing habitat, antelope population. So working with the permittees, we approached BP and said, rather than just plug all these artesian wells, let's do some type of mitigation program. They said, we'll put up half if you go find the other half of the money. And we were able to do that. And so we went in and replaced, I think, 14 artesian wells that were drilled in that greater Wamsutter area to maintain that wildlife and livestock range improvement resources out there. That's kind of one of the big projects that we first jumped into with an oil and gas company. And then it was also much broader than that because it addressed both the livestock industry and then the wildlife component. One of the very first things that we really jumped into head first was wild horses, which you guys are infinitely familiar with. So just a little history on that issue. So in 2002, the Conservation District, again, a lot of the ranching community and the wildlife community out there had grave concerns with this overpopulation of wild horses that were damaging our rangeland resources. So we started collecting some data, and I'll show you that. But the result of that data collection is that we have a real problem out there. And so in 2003, the Conservation District, and this was for the Adobe Town and the Salt Wells herd, which is all in Sweetwater County. It wasn't in our, but we filed a notice of intent to sue the Bureau of Land Management over excess horses. At that time, we had new governor come in under Governor Friedenthal administration. They looked at the issue. We provided them all the data and information that we collected, and they said, this is a statewide problem. So the state at that point in time took it on and said, we will sue the BLM, not just for Adobe Town and Salt Wells, but for every wild horse herd in the state of Wyoming. That resulted, that initial effort resulted in a 10-year consent decree with the BLM that they would keep all wild horses within the state of Wyoming at AML, appropriate population levels. And so, but that, as that evolved, this was really some of the data that we collected in Sweetwater County and some of this grazing along. I'm not going to go through this. I just want to point to you as those red bars. This is winter diets on wild horses, and primarily the Adobe Town herd were shrubs. So over 50% of their diet, some place are shrubs, and those shrubs are valuable for mule deer winter range, for antelope, for sage grouse, and it became a problem when you have a significant composition of an animal's diet is shrubs that as a grazer. It's because there's an unavailability, but we're damaging those other shrub communities to our wintering sheep populations. So it said, we've got a real problem. It's a range issue out here. And so that's what led us to that initial action. We followed up with that, working with Sweetwater County Conservation District. We received some grant money from the Department of Agriculture to go out there and further that analysis. And what that analysis is what they call microhistological analysis, where you go collect the fecal samples, and through those fecal samples, they can identify everything that animal ate. That's how we know that a significant portion of their diet was shrubs. And so we spent several more years out there. We expanded the area. This shows the areas that we started in orange. They're all in Sweetwater County. The Bureau of Land Management actually followed our lead on this. And then in 2007, they actually started going out and collecting these analysis. You'll see those in blue. And then over in 2013, we get that grant money from the Wyoming Department of Agriculture, working with the Sweetwater County Conservation District, expanded that to include all of those allotments over there in that side of that Adobe Town Salt Wells HMA. Anyway, just some of the work that we've done on wild horses, working with the Bureau and the Sweetwater County. This is a project that we did with the Forest Service back in 2004. There was a pilot program that was put out by Congress that allowed Forest Service to keep timber receipts to do contract work on national forests. And so we were the first project in Region 2 for the Rocky Mountain region with the Forest Service to enter into a stewardship contract on the Medicine Bow National Forest. And you're probably wondering, so what's the connection with Sweetwater County? Well, this is the forest condition at the time. You'll remember the height of the bark beetle pandemic in that part of Wyoming. We lost most of our lodgepole pine. That's a before picture when we started with the Forest Service. We had a contract with them to do all this work. That's an after. This was an aspen improvement project. We ended up hiring commercial loggers to come in to cut and remove that stuff. And then we got a little creative. This is in a 2007, 2008 timeframe. As you guys that have been here for a while, remember that was a pretty big blow or exponential growth with the natural gas at the time. And we were dealing with a lot of reclamation issues out there in the oil and gas industry. So we actually were able to create a product to facilitate reclamation in the oil and gas industry. So we skidded all of those trees up to landings using the logging company. We brought in a large commercial chipper that chipped those, and we got wood vans out of Idaho, those semi trucks, and then we ended up chipping all of that, and we supplied that. We had a contract with Anadarko Petroleum and Devon Energy for 3,500 cubic yards of wood chip to use in a reclamation process in Carbon and Sweetwater counties, again, in that greater Wamsutter area out there. Much of this went out there, tremendous results working with those companies and utilizing that material for reclamation purposes. Just a little more, this is a little closer to home. This is Bitter Creek. So this is an excerpt from Howard Stansberry, was a lieutenant in the U.S. Cavalry that came through here and did a lot of the early exploratory work. And so this is what he described of Bitter Creek. I'm not going to read that for you because you all know what Bitter Creek looks like, but the accurate description that he gave then is much the way it looks today. It's interesting talking about the massive amounts of sediment and silt that's washing into the Green River and stuff. But A couple years ago, you guys as commissioners are intimately familiar with the drop structure out there in Bitter Creek at that time. As that started under construction, we assisted the Sweetwater County Conservation District and some of the early fundraising to the water development program, but also provided engineering, design, and contract management assistance to make sure that that project actually got done. We do maintain on our staff a professional licensed engineer. And so we have provided some of that technical assistance to Sweetwater County in the past. Something that's near and dear to all of our heart, and particularly in Sweetwater County, because you have a predominance of federal land, is federal land use planning. And so we first dived into this whole monster called NEPA and federal land planning. In 1998, we filed for cooperating agency status with the Army Corps of Engineers on the develop of an EIS and a permit, for which is now today High Savory Dam, 2000 Medicine Bow National Forest. We actually led an effort, which was 5 counties and 7 conservation districts. It was kind of a precursor to what we have today over here in Southwest Wyoming, is CLG, that coalition of local governments. This was 5 counties and 7 conservation districts joined to do this Medicine Bow National Forest Plan. We, as the Little Snake, provided the staffing for that coalition at that time, similar to the way that some of the counties now provide county staff to facilitate CLG. We did that as a conservation district. I'm going to go on real quick here. Rollins RMP, Atlantic Rim Natural Gas Project, we're a cooperating agency on that, not only just on the ES, but the implementation. CDC, Continental Divide, Creston Junction, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've been a cooperating agency on environmental assessments, on restoration work, Bureau of Land Management on Choke Cherry, Sierra Madre, wind power development. Latest one, Medicine Bow National Forest on the EIS to treat 600,000 acres on the forest. And then just last year going cooperating agency status with the Natural Resource Conservation System on the development of the West Fork and Dam. Other things, cooperative agreements and contracts, memorandum of understanding that we have with federal and state agencies. We currently have a cooperative agreement for financial assistance with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land Management, where we receive funding through the Bureau for fuels, wildlife, Wyoming livestock, or Wyoming landscape conservation, and then through their 8100 program, the range improvements. NRCS, we actually provide engineering assistance to the federal government. We have a cooperative agreement with the Natural Resource because we have a licensed engineer on staff that they pay us to provide engineering services back to that federal agency. We've also done that with Wyoming Game and Fish Department, where they've contracted with us to use our engineering for some of their fisheries restoration work in the Little Snake River Basin. Wyoming Water Development Commission, Wildlife Natural Resource, Game and Fish Department, and the Department of Agriculture are some of the federal and state agencies that we have cooperative agreements with. Most recently, these are several large projects. You guys as commissioners are very aware of the amount of money that's come out through ARPA and a lot of these other federal programs and stuff, the Infrastructure Act. We're starting to see money come out through that right now. In the last 3 years, through the 2020, received a $1.25 million grant through the PL 566 program to do an environmental assessment, a watershed plan, and start the environmental assessment for a land swap between the state of Wyoming and the Medicine Bow National Forest for the purpose of constructing another storage reservoir in the Little Snake. 2021, we had submitted for the Yampa and the Little Snake River Basins a proposal to the Washington, D.C. office of the Natural Resource Conservation Service to do what they call their regional conservation pilot projects. We were competing in the entire Colorado River Basin. We were awarded $7.6 million. All this will go back to private landowners through contracts through the Farm Bill program. And then just recently, this April, we were awarded $1.451 million through the NRCS for what they call the Joint Chiefs Program. Again, we've worked with the Forest Service. They got 1.4 million. NRCS will get 1.45. That'll all be administered out of the BAGS office. Those will be traditional Farm Bill contracts those are eligible for private and state lands. And so most of that's fuels reduction, some habitat work, and then some water improvement. We've recently been notified that we're on the short list for some of this infrastructure money to do some more sage grouse habitat work in that area to keep those things off the list from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We haven't inked that agreement yet, but we've conditional approval of that. Just a little bit of history real quick, because this will come up to part of the discussion as to why the mill levy. This is a history. So if you look at blue, that's our mill levy that we received on those lands in Carbon County for the last 6 years. The green is the grant money that we bring in every year. And this is the grant money specifically that we administer. So these aren't the large federal grants. So this just deals with this. So on average, if we take the last 6 years, for every dollar that we collect in local tax revenues, we bring in $5.7 in grant money back into the county. The most important thing that I cannot overemphasize is that goes to jobs. Those guys that were harvesting those trees, those truck drivers running those van trucks, all of this work is about jobs and the economy. This is the reason that we feel that it's important for us now to take a larger role with Sweetwater County. We think we bring a lot to the table through the conservation district, either through engineering services or grant writing services, federal land use planning, all of those things, is to build that team with you guys, the Sweetwater County Commissioners. And so I always get a little emotional. You know, I think we have an opportunity, folks. I think this is a tremendous opportunity. You know, we work tremendously well with the Carbon County Commissioners. I see this as a team effort between the Sweetwater County Conservation District and the Sweetwater County Commission. This is a big job, folks. Big job. And we'd like to join your team. So with that, I'd stand for any questions. I've got board members here that would be more than happy to answer any questions, but you know, the more horses we can put pulling this wagon, the better off we're going to be. So thank you, Commissioner Lloyd and Commissioner Tolman, Commissioner Schoenfeld, if you're still with us, and then Commissioner Wendlandt. Thank you. And we would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
You miss Commissioner Tolman.
Well, Senator Hicks, I think you should be called the bittersweet Little Snake River Conservation District, you know.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, I would would ask you not to address me as senator, because I am not here in any capacity associated with that. I am the director for the Little Snake River. And I think it would be a misrepresentation that I was here in any other capacity than that. So thank you.
My comment would be that, you know, we started this process years ago when I was still chairman of the Conservation District. And you've carried it on. I think what this commission may not understand is that you have actually officially changed the boundaries of your district to include a portion officially as a part of your district, so that you would have the ability to be able to maybe ask for a mill levy in that very isolated portion of the county. I don't think this commission maybe would be fully aware of that, but the services and the staff that conservation district in Little Snake River has provided to Sweetwater County and actually to the state is probably second to none in the state, as far as having the ability to legally be able to implement and design projects is powerful. Sweetwater County has always been asked to limit growth of their staff. So they've always operated with one staff member, who is Karen Pacini, who's done an outstanding job, but they've always had to contract out for water quality services, engineering, design, and all of those other types of things. So I just can't stress enough how powerful of an ally, of a partner that they are. And Sweetwater County is not going to, we're not going to be losing our ability to, we still will have listed streams, and we will have water quality projects in this part of the county that we need to stay on top of. So This is not in any way going to affect how they operate as a conservation district in this portion of the county. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things along that line. And if you want to add anything to that, Larry, that'd be fine.
Yeah, so.
Maybe
Mr.
look at that
Chairman.
map. You might show them that map again, just to.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I can back up to that map, but specifically the statutory provision says is that, we have to come to the commission under 11-16-134 and bring this petition signed by a majority of the members, and you'll see the petition before you. Pursuant to that statute, there's one, you'll see Megan Lally, vice chairman, wasn't able to sign it. She did vote for it, but unfortunately, in the time frame to get it signed, she's out of state. And so, but it is recorded with the minutes there. But I can go back to that slide if the commissioners would like, if we need to, but.
I would, do the other commissioners need to see that slide?
I've got it. It's part of
The
the
issue
packet.
today is just asking for permission to let the voters in that area decide if they want a 1 mil levy. The boundary change has been approved by the Board of Agriculture, and that part is already a done deal. So they're not asking us for permission to change a boundary or anything like that. It's just simply permission to ask the 5 voters or however many there are in that area,
And
if
we
they'd be
don't-
willing to pay for.
and
a
we
mill
don't
levy.
know how many voters are out there, I mean, we did a cursory look, but you guys know how fraught with errors the census data was on some of this stuff. But yeah, it's to look at that, follow the statutory provisions. One of the reasons we wanted to get on before you guys early in this process is there is some statutory requirements of the clerk that has to advertise for 30 days and some other issues, but it's just to put it to the voters out there in that area as to whether they're going to support. So very similar discussion that you had earlier would just be to put to the voters the question of a 1 mil conservation vote.
Any other question for Mr. Hicks?
Mr.
And
Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, don't be hesitant to ask some of my board members either.
Commissioner Wendling, do you have any questions?
sure do.
Okay.
This boundary adjustment was May 5th, 2022, recently. Was this commission made aware that this boundary adjustment was going to take place, even though by statute, the local conservation district wouldn't have had to tell us?
So
That may not be a question for you. It might be one for our local conservation district.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would tell you, Commissioner Wendling, and I think that, this discussion's been going on for a number of years. I think you guys, commissioners, are aware at least that the discussion was going on. Just due to people's schedules and timing and things, it seemed like that we needed to get this process moved on. So there is a statutory process that we have to go through. First is both district boards have to pass by resolution approval to exchange lands from one district and another. Then it has to go to the Board of Agriculture for approval. And then subsequent to that, it has to be filed with the Secretary of State for a permanent recording of those boundaries. So that's a pretty lengthy process in itself. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Wendling, where you were explicitly told, but I'm under the assumption that you were aware that this process was going on.
Yeah, I'm aware and had heard about it and had a few discussions here or there about it, but what it is, a county commissioner represents the people of the county. He doesn't just represent sole groups alone, boards and that type of thing. He also represent. And the county is, for the most part, 70% public lands plus, which means it belongs to the people. And if that's the case, I think sometimes the people need to know what's going on, even if they don't live in that part, but they still have not ownership, but yeah, they still have a say. And my point was, as this process moved forward and was going to happen, it would have been great to have it come before this commission, not to approve, but not only to inform us, but give the public an opportunity to tune in. Also to have possibly, informed the public. So that brings to mind, I probably already know the answers to this question, but I would not see it as a responsibility of Little Snake River. I would see it more as a responsibility of our own conservation district of advertising to let people know that these were the conversations. Now, I will say this, there have been times when I sat in conservation districts meetings and there were conversations amongst them. I just don't know if it was on the agenda, and Mary could answer, Commissioner Tolman could answer if it were to bring people in for comment or not. So it brings to mind is how much notification, not only to these people, also, were there any town halls for not only those residencies, but for industry and that type of thing? Because this is a huge industry area, very huge. And there's some things that I think for me to make a final decision, I'd want to know what the impacted communities are. Now, I already know what the feelings probably are of the residents who live there and really appreciate what the conservation districts are doing for them. I think I know what they'd like, without a doubt. And if they were the only ones impacted, it's a no-brainer. But they're not. They're not. There's a lot more impacted. So I'll get to that in a little bit. The other question I have is when I look at the boundary adjustment and that type of thing, I see a little section in there carved out that remains if SWCCD means Sweetwater County Conservation District. Can you explain, did we carve out something that, why, what's happening there? Or am I misreading it? On the map between Wamsutter along 789, which could be the interstate, there's one little section that remains, Sweetwater County Conservation District. What is that?
Oh,
Mr.
yes,
Chairman.
those, yeah, go ahead and answer those, Mr. Hicks.
Okay, that was a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I could probably answer the first question about the public.
Well, let
meetings.
Mr. Hicks go ahead, and then if he needs to throw to you, we'll go that
Okay.
way. Thank you, Mary.
And it's, and I appreciate the fact you take your job very seriously. And I know, just like you guys, that these board of supervisors are on the general election ballot and they have an elected responsibility too. And so what we've tried to do is keep as many people informed as possible. Those are public meetings, just like this is a public meeting. Those agendas are published just like every other public meeting. And so this was clearly following all the statutory constructs of public meeting, advertising the agendas, taking those public comments. Again, this has gone on for several years. We've also done significant level of what I would call outreach. I think you're correct, Commissioner Wentley. A lot of that is through the ag community, but we've also reached out to some of the biggest landowners out there and had conversations with them. But there's a process that has to be followed statutorily. And I think you laid that out earlier, Mr. Chairman, this is what we have to do legally. And so we've had those public meetings advertised through the conservation districts. We've had discussions with constituents for several years now. This is part of the public process now. And so we're following that statutory framework that's been laid out to us. This is just one more step in that public process, is to come before you guys now in a public setting and say, this is a petition following statutory construct. It's advertised, it was out there. I think you guys understand the difficulty of reaching out to every single public out there. It's no different than the discussion you have early. This is a question that goes out there and says it goes to the public. They will make the ultimate decision, those people that reside in their area. No different that we have a responsibility to represent all industries. I think part of that question comes back to is, you know, how do you plan on, if you were successful in chaining a mill levy funding? Under statutory construct, it says a maximum of 1 mil. And I can tell you, I work for one of the most fiscally conservative boards in the state of Wyoming. They share the same responsibility that you have as a prudent expenditure of taxpayer dollars. We are not obligated to assess a full 1 mil. Now, we've had significant discussions trying to get to this question of this, what is it? How much is it? And we've had discussions with the Department of Revenue, our discussions, because the primary tax base out there is going to be ad valorem taxes on minerals. We understand that. We believe that there's services we can provide to the mineral industry. We've done that in the past, and I think we will continue to do that. That doesn't mean that we have to assess the full mill on those. It's clearly the intent of us is to run a fiscally sound, responsible budget. And if we come back a year from now or 2 years from now, we'll bring our budget back to you guys. We've got to justify that in a public process, and it may be 1/4 of a mil or 1/2 of a mil or 60% of a mil. We don't know that now because in my discussions with the Department of Revenue, they can't tell us what those ad valorem taxes will be because they're self-reported by the industry. And until they've been notified that there's another tax, they don't know what that would be across the board. So we're still waiting for those numbers. So I don't know that I answered your question on that to the satisfaction you'd like to see, but we've done what I would say is to the best of our ability and followed the statutory construct.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hicks.
Commissioner Wendling, sorry.
I think you answered it the best you can because you follow a process. I take it off map a little bit or off chart and say, hey, if I do everything following by process, I'm right. But yet, have I taken the extra efforts to make sure I have seen what the impacts are going to be to certain parties and that type of thing? So first of all, I'll get back to that later in a minute. I'm not going to let you off the hook for a bit. What is, go ahead.
I still have to answer your second part of your question.
Oh, I'll back up. I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Yep. You can skip that if you'd like.
No.
So Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Wendling, the second part that I had jotted down here was the carve out. And that's that red desert, let's call it an extraordinarily large subdivision out there. And
okay.
So it's interesting when you actually go through that and look at, go to your county tax assessors and see who owns that and where they live. Hawaii, Florida, New York, California. And so when we went through this caution, this discussion is to include it or exclude it. It's how do you service that? I know how to go out and do reclamation and federal land use planning and wild horses and oil and gas and sage grouse and all that stuff. But what services are we realistically going to apply to a bunch of absentee owners in the middle of the red desert? And so the rationale came back as the discussion that my board and the Sweetwater County board is it's not likely that we're going to provide a lot of services to them. So under that scenario, why would you tax them if you can't serve us? So I hope that answers your question.
No, but that would be part of the tax base though.
It would be, but I honestly, and it gets back to that, just our fundamental nature. I don't think you should believe tax people and then don't deliver some level of service to them.
Thank you.
Similar to Wamsutter.
Huh?
Address Wamsutter, same way.
So Wamsutter is in the same boat. You can't see it on the scale of that map, but
No,
we've
I
left
can't
the
see
city of Wamsutter out.
It's scaled out. Okay, I can't see it.
Now, let me say one thing to that issue. We don't run a lot of municipal programs when you have Baggs, Dixon, and Savory. But we provide significant services to those communities. And it's full intent of the discussions that my board has had We've provided engineering services to the town of Bags. We've provided when their water infiltration gallery collapsed and you've got 380 people in a $600,000 infiltration gallery. We worked with their engineers and utilized our ability to design upstream and downstream of that and finance that. The city of town of Bags then used that, what we were doing upstream and downstream on the river restoration, to go to SLIB and say it's actually a $1.5 million, $2 million project. We just want 600,000, but we've provided flooding assistance to Bags. We've provided engineering assistance to Bags, and we will continue to do that. At a request from Wamsutter or any of those subdividers out there, we will provide those, but we don't gear our conservation programs specific to municipal projects or to those subdivisions. So it's not that we won't provide services.
All right, very good. What is, and I'm sure you've looked at this, what will 1 mil generate out there?
Getting back to that question, the biggest component of that is the ad valorem taxes. We don't know that question yet.
Well, the assessor can't put that together an estimate?
I don't, not in my discussions with the Department of Revenue, not on the ad valorem. They could give us a pretty reasonable amount on the property tax, the physical property that's already out there, not the ad valorem taxes.
Not the ad valorem though.
The question, and I actually just recently tried to reach out to the county assessor. Early on, the question was, how much time does he have to spend on this, not knowing whether there would even be a mill levy proposition? Now, how much time are we going to ask the county assessor to go through there and draw all these boundaries and look at all that? So we don't know the answer to that question, but that was the rationale that we went through is, you know, there's only really one way to find out. The big portion is going to be ad valorem taxes. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Which is industry.
Yeah.
So then my question becomes is, and I think I already know the answer, but I think the public that may be listening today would want to know this is on your petition that's signed, is it signed purely by landowners or is it signed by industry as well?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused.
I mean, when you worked on your petition, did you by chance visit with the present big industries that are out there to see where they would be?
Not all of them. And I would say probably not the bulk of them.
Because they're the ones that are going to be impacted by this.
I think anybody that pays the tax is impacted.
Well, I agree, but they're the ones that are going to pay the bigger share of the taxes.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, it's the full intent of the board is make a determination, and that very well not be that. It may be 1/10 of a mil. The question will become back, do they feel like they're deriving adequate level of service for the taxes they pay? That's always the question. And until we, you know, it's going to take, so if we walk through the process of this, so let's assume that this goes on the ballot. I want to talk a little bit about whether it should be a mail-in vote or mail-out or a direct. That's a discussion that I think the county clerk needs to be involved in. But back to that question, Commissioner Wendling is we'll know that when we get there. And so the process is we go on the ballot, let's say November, that's passed. Those revenues really don't start to flow in until starting in 2023. Very few people are going to pay in July on their first half. Other might be a little bit. So they're really not going to see any revenue until the end of 2023, starting, you know, because of the December, January, pay your property taxes at that time. I'm still trying to understand how these ad valorem taxes that will start being collected on a monthly basis. I don't know whether Sweetwater County has adopted that. Some counties opted not to do that, how that's going to affect. But the reality is we're just not going to know whether a mill levy is going to drive until probably sometime in January of 2024. I mean, that's when you will finally have all those tax receipts show up. And at that point in time, I'll be able to give you a lot better information of this, how much is 1 mil drive. At that point in time, we come back to you guys with our budget. We can go on an annual basis. The commissioners, we can make a recommendation to lower that as part of that annual budgeting process. So I can't answer your question because I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I do know when the Red Desert Clinic Health District was established out there, and that was up to a 3 mil. Industry signed off on them. They took the time to go talk to the big industry, and they did give the commissioners at that time, I believe, a notice of support or non-support. And the commissioners asked for that at that time, I believe. So I'm kind of thinking, why is it possible for one to do it, but not any future ones down the road?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the answer to that. It's called statutes. And so.
Yeah, I agree with that, but
To form a rural healthcare district, a musician district, or some of these other districts, you have to go out and get a percentage of the taxpayers within that district to sign that petition to go on the ballot. That isn't in the conservation district statutes or even in the special district statutes. There's different statutory constructs.
I
And
agree
so
with you, but it doesn't mean it's not a good practice.
would never argue it's not a good practice. But,
Don't have to do it.
you do to the extent you would do what you can.
Yeah,
I
or you
guess.
wait and do it when you know more concrete variables.
Well, I don't know how those variables, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure exactly.
No, I'm
what
not.
Variables you're
Just-
talking about.
I'm just thinking as you're talking.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr. Hicks? Do any of the commissioners need to hear from a member of the Sweetwater Conservation District regarding their position? I did reach out to some of the members, and they did share that they did vote to agree to move forward with this. But I think it would be good to have them come share their thought process on this at that time. So if a member of them would like to come up, and if we do come up with other questions for Mr. Hicks, we can bring him back up. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm Tom Burris, Chairman of Sweetwater County Conservation District. This has been
And Tom, make sure you speak into the mic since you are softer.
this has been an ongoing process for, I'm guessing 15 years at least that we've been trying to do this. Little Snake is a community that is made up a lot of agricultural and business people over there, industry people. Just quite similar to what that hum coming through too bad or what? I'm hearing a loud hum from
You're
it.
good.
Okay. Get my back thought back here. We are a lot of the projects that are provided by Little Snake River apply to mostly agricultural people. They're large projects. Getting back to what the carve out portion, they don't provide, that's mostly that section is subdivision. It impacts a little bit on the tax structure will be different where the subdivided area than it is for agriculture area. So that by us keeping that section will benefit Sweetwater County somewhat. Not all that much because there's not all that many tax dollars out there. We have been dealing with this for, like I say, several years to try to improve the service that we are able to provide to the users out there in that section of the county. Historically, we used to be the Big Sandy Conservation District located in Farson. But even when we were Sweetwater or Big Sandy, we still had in complete Sweetwater County was in our jurisdiction or our purview that we had to deal with. We started dealing with Little Snake, I believe, when we were still in Big Sandy Conservation District. So it's been several years. Even so, with the we moved to Rock Springs and we tried to get a mill levy. We felt we knew we should try to get a mill levy. When we were Big Sandy, it would never fly. We moved our offices to Rock Springs and started reaching out more to other areas, Manila or McKinnon, shouldn't say Manila, but anyway, those communities, we've done a lot of projects that have served them. We've had Trout Unlimited and other organizations that have pitched in with us that we coordinated with to develop projects on the western part. Sweetwater County is all volunteer. We have one person on staff. Little Snake has engineers. There are mill levies. They got hired staff to be able to do a lot of these functions that we can't possibly do once on almost 7 million acres. And we feel that this is a good event or a good process to improve the service to the agricultural folks in the eastern part of the county. Someday maybe we could get a mill levy and be able to get a staff. It would be tough to get a staff like Little Snake's got, because you've heard from two of them that have got 30+ years service. I've got over 20 years. Mary had over 20 years. Jean's got over 20 years. And trying to keep that going and keep the high level of service to as many of the constituents in Sweetwater County. We feel that this is a good move. In the past, we've had, I guess you guys have changed your procedures a little bit. We had liaisons. Commissioner Wendling was a liaison to the Conservation District. We tried very hard to keep him informed, and you were our liaison for some time, and right now that may have your changes may have impacted getting everybody in the commission advised. Also, I'm relatively new at the chairman. Maybe it's possible that I could have done a better job informing you guys and keeping everybody apprised. I thought we had advised you recently well enough, and that your process would ultimately inform the commission. That's basically. Have you got any other questions that I could help to clarify with?
Mr. Well, Tom, I just have a couple. Yeah, I wanted to share that as your liaison, and even though we no longer have the liaisons, I have tried to remain active with you
Yes,
guys.
you have, and we appreciate that.
And I can't remember if I ever did share in any commissioner comments that this was something you guys were looking at, because I know it's something you were looking at for a point of time. So I do appreciate, I know that it was brought up in meetings with me there. So if I failed to bring that forward, or if it was failed to bring forward by other commissioners, I apologize for that. So, but I did want to just make that comment. So
we appreciate your efforts. You've been very effective, and we really appreciate you coming down to CLG. Okay, I was gonna say the process, I was unfamiliar with the process on approving this through the state land board and all that stuff up there. It happened a lot faster than I thought it was, and we got that, or just beat the deadline, and just before a meeting. And I think it was less than 2 weeks after we passed the thing that the state called, had a meeting to discuss getting it, finalizing it, and 10 minutes later, it was a done deal, So sometimes things go slow, and sometimes they go a lot faster than you think to do. But I think with our budget information or our meetings, we've been trying to increase our familiarity or our information flow between us and you guys. We'll continue to work on that so we can make sure we get do our part to keep you a little better informed.
Any other questions for Tom?
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to answer Commissioner Wendling's question about the public process. 3 years ago, we did have a major public meeting in Rock Springs, and Little Snake was there, the assessor was there, the public was invited. We had 30-some people at the meeting. At the very start of that process, there was a major public meeting,
Right, there was.
one that I know of, that I participated in.
Yeah, that was,
Maybe
there were several
more.
people here were at that meeting also, and several other local Rock Springs folks were there too.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman.
Any other questions, Commissioner Wendling or Commissioner Tillman?
Just a statement.
I would accept that.
You would attempt that?
I
You wanna
don't know,
make
go
it?
ahead. No, go for it.
Well, thank you. You know, I don't think many people know, Mr. Burris, that if it hadn't been for the individuals at Little Snake Conservation District, whether it was their board or whether it was their engineers or whether it was whatever, I don't know if we'd ever got that diversion that completed. and
I don't
completed
think,
correctly.
I don't think we would. have, so.
I just, you know, I don't think many people know that that they helped us find the right a contractor to finish that job. They also, their engineer showed up and that type of thing that facilitated in somewhat redesigning that with our engineer so that it could get done and hopefully work properly. So I just don't want that to go by the wayside without people knowing that how big a help, and they probably saved the project.
I don't doubt that.
And I don't either. So I just want Little Snake River representation here to know that
We would
do.
probably be working on the next head cut upstream.
Upstream is
Try
what they're-
to,
but I
everything
just,
would have been washed out below that, you know.
I agree with you, but I just want with the board members here and Mr. Hicks and everybody to know that their work and stepping up to help us, it's greatly appreciated. And I think it has made some difference in flow of that sediment into the green,
Yes.
but still got work to do in other aspects of Bitter Creek.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
do.
But thank
Thank
you.
you, Commissioner Wendling. That was a good point. We appreciate that.
Okay. All right, I just want to stop. Any other questions for Tom? So I am getting indicated there are some other members of the conservation districts that have kind of motioned that they want to speak. Is anybody, would you like to hear from them, folks?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
That's
So,
why they
all right.
traveled.
I just want to make sure we want to hear and we move forward. So go ahead, Tom. Thank you very much. I know Gene had mentioned, did you want to say something, Gene? And as you come up, please announce into the microphone who you are and who you're with, so we can hear that clearly on the World Wide Web.
Jean Dickinson, the urban liaison for the Conservation District, Sweetwater County. The question that I had just for the board, because it isn't clear to me what the process would be as far as if you could explain to me whether or not you're going to entertain and either whether it would be a mail-in ballot or whether you would put it on the general, just I guess the process, what you would need from either our district or the Little Snake Conservation District to go ahead. And we were trying to be responsive in terms of the many meetings that we had with regard to the stresses that budgets had. And we have already explained, and I won't replow that ground, that this has been being talked about for many years. And the ability, my main thing is that we get conservation on the ground. I don't care who gets the credit, and that we're responsive to how we're spending those taxpayer dollars and doing the best that we can to leverage those dollars to the highest. And so the work that we've done, we're working with our neighbors, we're working with family members, in terms of just the interchangeability the different parts of the county, the regional nature that we're dealing with. So whether they're in the energy industry, agriculture, there's crossovers. And so we're trying to do the best we can. We have had many times, are you going to get a mill levy, or have you thought about that? Well, this just may be a different way of eating this elephant one bite at a time. And that we know that there's, I mean, we know that we're looking at parts of the county that there's a mill levy in Uena County, and those people are more regionally. There's a lot of them that are the same way as the Little Snake River Conservation District. So we're trying to respect, and we have had conversations. This comes from our tenure of 20 years of being a Big Sandy Conservation District, only servicing 10% of the county, then realizing that the boundary was the whole of the county. We do the best that we could, and it just is it's a different tact. I've been on both sides of the equation and thought that the timing was right, especially with what was happening to the industry ad valorem, what was happening to agriculture. And to be very honest, we produce food and energy, and yes, there's recreation, but we have national security issues. And we've got forests that aren't in good shape, and they're the headwaters for the Colorado River system. We take and understand that 70% of the land that's in our county that we don't have a lot of control over, but we try to have that voice. And we believe that this was going to give us the best way to get conservation on the ground for everyone. Okay. Aside from that we look at it where we want to keep jobs in Wyoming. We want to keep Wyoming people working as much as we can. And we want to do the best for our, for those lands, the wildlife, the agriculture, and the energy. So my thing is could we take a moment with you as the commission to just, whether it's the county clerk, what then, and maybe Larry has some more to add to that, but we believe that the time was right. We know that the time is now in terms of being able to get it on the agenda, whether it's a ballot, whether it's mail in, and what is it that to be able to move this process forward, given when that Larry has said that, we're not going to see much of the benefit of that until possibly January 2024. So if you could take a moment, anyway, been at this a long time, but I believe that we did the right thing in terms of making sure that we get conservation on the ground, and that we leverage those taxpayer dollars to the best that we could with state and federal funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Clerk Lane, if you could come up, because I think you're kind of integral in answering some of those questions that might be there. And John, you will probably be part of this discussion too, but we'll lead with Cindy. So I guess if we were to move forward with this, what would be the ballot? And you've already got your statutes out, I see. So, so we're prepared to have this discussion. So Cindy, I'll let you know what's up. So as a specific to, if we were to pass this, would this just be on the ballot? Would be mail-in? How would that all this work? So.
Okay, actually, Mr. Daly and I did look this up when I was called on Friday to start the process.
And you are Cindy Lane, correct?
I am Cindy Lane, Sweetwater County Clerk. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. We would need the question. When we looked it up, it falls back on the bond election, which is statute 22-21-103. So that would include, just like the specific purpose, that I would have to have the question and all of that by July 20th at 5 o'clock for it to go on the general election in November. The easiest way, I think, since that ballot will be made after that time, is to put it on the general ballot. That is something that the county clerk does decide, is whether it needs to be mail-in or on the ballot. And most of the time mail-in is if it's already set in place or if it helps not create a split. So that's what we looked at when we were doing redistricting, was we were trying to look at mail ballots, but that it didn't save us any splits because we now have 37. So it would have saved 5. So it was too much of a hassle. It's easier for the voters to just have it on the regular ballot, I think, so you get more participation of your voters in that community. However, I could look at it either way, but it would go on the general ballot if it's to go this year.
Questions for Ms. Lane?
You have an Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman,
Wendling.
thank you. Ms. Lane, do you have an idea how many voters we're talking about?
Actually, we were trying to find it, but it's so busy over there with early voting. I think it's around 100, but I couldn't be positive.
Well, I didn't hear.
About 100.
100,
There's not as many out in Monster. It is one of our larger outlying communities.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Lane or any clarifications for Mr. De Leon?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Commissioner Wendling.
Ms. Lane. Would. I'm not, different polling place. I mean, right now you have Wamsutter.
Mhm.
And then when I take a look at their map and polling precincts around Wamsutter, are there smaller ones?
No, there are not.
So everybody-
It
so-
looks like it just mainly includes Wamsutter. Like
But then
that polling
Wamsutter
location.
won't vote though. Am I right?
Correct. So I don't know if we
So
have
then you
really any
have to
voters
set up
out there.
everything that's around it.
No, they would still go. We would just have to create a split. They
District.
still would go into the Wamsutter polling
Yeah,
location.
they do that at Granger.
They do
have
that?
In town,
I've-
out of town.
I've never seen that. I've
Yeah,
heard of
they
it.
have
So
two
thank you.
ballots.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
So,
So it creates a split, but
okay,
it can be done.
thank you.
Any other questions for Commissioner, for Clerk Lane? And John, anything from you?
So, okay, so Clerk Lane, obviously, Chief Election Officer.
Mr. De Leon.
You talk closer.
Clerk Lane is the Chief Election Officer. This election, 11-16-134B, does say that the proposition to impose a tax under this act shall be at the expense of the county and may be submitted. In other words, that's the board's choice. If it is submitted upon the receipt by the board of a petition signed by a majority of the district, the election shall be at the direction and under the supervision of the Board of County Commissioners. So that is a slight distinction in terms of processes as is being identified. The options are, of course, mail in and or to be on the ballot. And so I think that that would be part of a decision-making process between the chief election officer, you as a board, and in all likelihood in consultation with the district that's involved. That being said, I did want to clarify, and Clerk Lane did identify it, but the typical procedure is for, as with other taxes, the clerk will receive a proposition. And so I would assume that the clerk would receive that proposition, that question from the district, so that the clerk isn't independently just putting that together, that would be received from the district and then presented in one of those two fashions as Clerk Lane and you as the board deem best.
Mr. Chairman, I believe was the question in the petition. I believe it's in the petition.
Two components of that is 11-16-134 subsection C, and it does require some statutory language, has to be on the ballot for or against the conservation tax. There is another provision that the supervisors pick in 11-16-134 C, whether it stays on the ballot or it's up every 4 years. If it stays on the ballot, or if it stays, it's called a petition recall. So it takes, and the Board of Supervisors chooses which language, whether it's every 4 years or whether they do, which is Romanet 2, is the petition recall. The only reason that I brought it up earlier is trying to ascertain who all lives out there in rural service is a big effort. And we tried to do some of that stuff. The only reason I brought up the mail-in is I thought it would give an opportunity for Clerk Lane to have her staff look at that. And if it's a very small number of people, it may save the county some money and it may not. I would to run that analysis to look at that versus a split ballot, because you have to identify those individuals that can vote on that. And you've already gone through that process. And if it's not a large number of individuals, it may be cheaper just to send a mail out than to print that out on every ballot. But that was the only reason I brought that up earlier.
Right. I guess one question that I just want to ask John, and your goodness, Mr. Hicks, is, are we getting in the weeds a little bit? I think what do we need to get as far as how we vote, how the vote would be done today? Or do we just need to determine on the petition, then move forward from that point?
You can get into as many weeds as you would like.
Well, I guess the question is, do we need to get into that many weeks today, or is it a matter at hand discussing the petition? And are we going to allow it to go onto the ballot? I think because that's the major question at this point. Am I correct?
The variables, as with any
variables. Anyway.
Yeah, any tax, you make the decision if it goes to the voters. This one contains a language that says up to 1%. And again, that's a variable that existed with other taxes. And so that particular decision does not have to be made today in terms of the mail-in ballot. Certainly you can. There's time between now and July 20th, which is the time frame within which the proposition has to be ready for Chief Election Officer Clerk Lane. And so you have that limited amount of time to be able to address any, if you do want to get into any particulars, but you also have the option of being able to move to put this on the ballot today.
Any other questions for Ms. Lane from any of the commissioners or Mr. De Leon?
Chairman Lloyd.
Yes.
May I speak?
Yes, absolutely.
That would be the other thing, is I do need to have it added onto the GIS mapping system so that I can find out who lives inside and outside of that new boundary line, because that's not something set up right now where I can actually tell you who's in that, who my voters are, because it's not in the system. So I will send that, try to get that information like a shape file or something, so I can send it to our GIS mapping. And then I'd be able to see that. I can probably tell you today. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Any other things we need to hear from any of the members of the district? Are we ready for a question? If there's no other information at this point, I would be willing to take a motion on the table.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to, what am I going to approve a 1 mil levy proposition for the Little Snake River Conservation District area in Sweetwater County. Mr. De Leon, is that appropriate wording?
It is. Again, I would just clarify that the proposition would have to be presented to Ms. Lane. The current document does not have the specific proposition. So that would be completed. But I think your language, Mr. Chairman, and
with the addition of a petition to be presented to Clerk Lane by July 20th. Does it have to come back before this commission?
does not.
No. So it's just up to you after that.
No.
Okay.
If you had that, John, excuse me, John, if I'm just a point of order, if we were to put that provision in there, then that would not have to come back, correct?
It does not, the statute does not specifically say that it needs to come back. It says that upon receipt of the petition, that you as the board may submit the proposition to the voters. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit, I guess, non-specific in that regard. It is a little different than the typically speaking, you would be approving the proposition itself. This language says upon receipt of a petition that you may submit that proposition. And I think that the language that Commissioner Tolman used, which is that a motion to approve that a proposition be submitted to the voters for a 1% tax does encompass the request.
And I would say, not as part of my motion, but that Clerk Lane and the district would determine whether it's mail-in or election and the type of,
That'd be Clerk Lane and
Vote.
us.
no, it'd be Clerk Lane in that district.
So are we good on the motion, John?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second? Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Not Mr. De Leon.
Yes,
Am I allowed to second?
you are.
So I would second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wendley.
I would amend the motion to read in the resolution that to impose a conservation district tax to the voters up to 1 mil tax assessment.
I would approve that as the
So-
maker of the motion.
Pardon?
I would accept that as the maker of the motion. I would
Okay,
accept that amendment.
let's walk the process. So we have an amendment on the table. And Doc, will you repeat that amendment one more time? Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we amend petition to impose a conservation district tax to the voters up to 1 mil.
Okay.
Tax.
Do we have a second on the amendment?
Yes.
Any discussion specific to the amendment? With that being said, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now we can make the motion based upon, so Doc, will you give me that as a real motion now? Because we have to vote on that, or did we pass it that
Vote
way?
on the amendment. Once it's passed,
Yep.
it'll be inserted. So now you're back to discussion on the original.
Okay, so we're back on,
Motion.
thank you. We're back on discussion on the original motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wendling.
I would like to make a motion that the talk be tabled until our next meeting when we have a full slate of commissioners present.
Is there a second? I would second that. Okay, so the current motion, as we go through motion merry-go-round, is that this discussion will be tabled until the next meeting when we have a full slate of commissioners. Any discussion?
You're going to guarantee a full slate at the next meeting?
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I
Wendling?
think I owe it to the public to explain why I
Yeah,
wanted to go that route. You know, we've worked through special taxes, general, let's just say imposing a tax upon representation of people in our county. And we've talked several times about, hey, have we spent the time advertising? Have we spent the time talking with the people? Have we talked, you know, that type of thing with these other tax impositions? Has there been enough time to have the good discussions over the tax? And as I read through everything that was part of the packet, and I read through those different statutes and those different A, Bs, and Cs, and what all this entails. Should it be mail-in ballot? Should it be on the ballot? Should the clerk's got to do special maps? The clerk's got to do this, and all of a sudden our timeline is less than 17 days at the most. I truly believe this is a good thing, but I also always hate that in education. Be careful, whatever you hear after the but, you better be listening to. But anyhow, I just think there needs to be some more discussion to get it on right, to talk with the right people. If we don't know until 2020, whatever, what it's going to cost somebody, we as commissioners truly owe them the opportunity to find that out so we can look at it. Also, I take a look at the Conservation District's budget for this year. That is fully, this amount I'm going to give you is fully funded out of the general fund of the county commissioners, out of the 12 mil, which is a little over $221,000. Now, that didn't change from last year, I believe. Might have been reduced the year before, but so it's still at 221. Well, within that time, I've seen the boundaries change for the conservation district. So as a taxpayer, I think, okay, if my boundaries changed a little bit, so should my budget. But in defense of Little Snake, conservation just said, hey, we picked this up, so we should get some funding from the county, and I'm not arguing that. But there's a process to follow through that with the county commissioners, and that's to go through the budgeting process. Second of all, I also think about, you know, how come this dollar amount didn't drop? We know that we've, over the last year, offered some in-kind services for conservation district for rent and that type of thing, and whatever, and we didn't see that. And we didn't ask for that reduction or anything in their budget. We just left it as it is. So my question becomes, what part of that 221,000 might be able to come out of their budget towards helping Little Snake River to offset up to 1 mil for those tax-paying entities? So I just get into that arena. Then I got to look at over the next 15 days, 17 days, what kind of hardship are we going to put on the clerk's office, the election office, to get all this put together. Then I look at the right wording. And then the decision of, hey, is it knowing where these electors are located? Is it better to do, what's the best way to do a mail or general? And I just don't think I have enough answers for being a taxpayer to move on it immediately. I think we could have the answers in time. And with some good conversations, I think we can do a better job of setting it up and doing a better job of finding that support, get out there and talk with those industries and that type of thing. And I agree with Mr. Hicks. Those probably are the same industries that they have in Carbon County. I don't doubt that for a moment. But I'm making the decision and I want to have those conversations. I want to know what the thinking is. So as much as I believe everything's said right, I think one thing happening too fast, happening too soon. And I only say to my fellow commissioners, what's occurred in the past when we've moved too quickly and that type of thing. I just asked them that. So that's why I'm doing this. It's not that, I think it's great. When I look at the boundaries and I look at everything, the last thing I want to see most is the collaboration continuing between not only the two counties, but the two conservation districts. And I agree with everybody. It's time to get that feed under the conservation district. How we do that, we got to figure that out together. And it's not something I think we should do real quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just one quick question, Cindy. If we were to put this off till next week, does that give you time if we don't make a decision until the 1st to be sufficient to put it on the budget, on the ballot? Sorry.
Jobs sometimes get in the way. Yeah, that'd be fine. I just need to get the information to get it to the GIS so I can even identify who the voters are, if we even have any in those outlying areas, if Wamsutter is not included.
Okay. Just my discussion would be, I'm actually in favor of this. I think this is a good move. I do think there is more information that can be gathered. It could be helpful, but I think as a sum of a whole, I think it makes sense to me. I think sometimes as a commission, we've had a history of kicking the can down the road and not making decisions and waiting, but this is a pretty big decision involving taxation of our folks. So I'd be okay to put this back on the agenda next meeting to hear what Commissioner Schanfeld and Commissioner Smith felt, but also that will let us see the exact question that will be put on the ballot. And maybe in between time, discussion can happen between the Conservation District and Clerk Lane of exactly how that would be done. And that will answer some of the questions that I think will help for the other commissioners. So I am going to vote that my vote will be to table it, but I want to make it very clear. I am in support of this. I think there's some questions that can be answered in the next couple of weeks that will help me feel better, but also answer those questions that we're trying to hash out at a commission session that can be hashed out outside of a commission session in a more productive way. So with that, any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wendling.
Point, counterpoint.
Yep, I'll take one.
All right, thank you. When you say we kicked the can down the road, I know you tried to qualify that, but we haven't done that very often, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
Please don't make it sound like that's a habit of the commission.
I would agree with that. There have been just times, so we'll just go that way. So, and you know, when that's the hard part, when you have 5 and you're not all 5 here, you don't want to make a decision, but we were also elected to make decisions even when we were shorthanded. So, with that, the motion currently is, after all the motions that went out, to table the discussion till next week. And I'd like to make sure as we put that motion out there that that the Conservation District does get the question to Cindy in the exact way, and discussion does occur of how the balloting process will work. So that's clear and concise when we come back. Do I have that's the motion, and we have a second. So any other discussion?
I think you've had a second already.
Okay, so I've already seconded it. So all in favor with an aye?
Roll
Aye.
call vote.
What's that?
Roll call vote.
Roll call.
Well, it's unanimous, I guess, for now.
You want to do unanimous? Okay,
Yeah,
let's just
for
go
now,
aye.
yeah.
Fine, I'll
Okay.
retract it.
All right, all in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes to discuss next week with those clarifications created.
Not next week.
Sorry, in the next meeting, Mary. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for giving me, as the interim chairman, a great Robert's Rules Olympics Gymnasium Act today. So I appreciate that. All right, that concludes our regular agenda. Do we have any scheduled executive items? I have no, Mary said something. Did you have something for
I
executive?
just wanted to give a quick update on the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan. It's pre-decisional still.
Now, would that be executive or would
Yes.
that be?
Well, it's
Okay, John's shaking his head,
pre-decisional.
executive.
Yes,
Okay, so we will, is that pre-decisional then, Mary, is what we're
yes,
talking?
yes, it is.
BLM. All right, with that being said, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, I will make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. I do want to thank the districts for being here today and
you.
walking through us as we went through some crazy